Chapter 3 of Tractate Rosh Hashanah further goes through the laws of Rosh Chodesh, the first day of a month, and the sanctification of the new moon. The first Mishnah states that if the moon is seen or witnesses testify, but the court didn't have time to proclaim that it is sanctified to make that day Rosh Chodesh before it grew dark, then that month is considered a full month of 30 days, and the next day is Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the month. If only the members of the court saw the moon, 2 of them should testify before the others, and they proclaim that it's sanctified. If 3 of the members of the court saw the moon, 2 of them should testify before the third, and 2 others, who will sanctify it together, as it can't be done by one judge. The Gemara says that even if the moon was seen by everyone, and it wasn't officially sanctified on time, it still becomes a full month. You can't have a valid testimony on this by night, unlike by monetary litigation. The reason the judges can't sanctify based on their own sighting is that's only allowed to be done by them right after, and this is where they saw the new moon at night, so would have to wait. The second case was brought to teach the point that a judge can't sanctify the Rosh Chodesh day by himself, unlike by monetary cases where a recognized expert judge can judge alone. By these laws, even Moshe wasn't allowed to sanctify by himself, he required Aaron with him. This is discussed further. New Mishnah, more on a new topic, and the final topic of this tractate, the laws of the blowing of the shofar. All shofars can be used on Rosh Hashanah, besides for a cow's horn, which is only ever referred to as a keren, which is a different word than shofar. Others disagree, saying all shofars are also called by the name keren based on a source. The Gemara answers that point as all other animals are also called keren, but a cow's horn is never referred to as a shofar. This is argued over, and that source would not allow a cow's horn anyways from a different reason, the same reason the Kohen Gadol does not wear gold on the services of Yom Kippur. We don't want any reminders of the golden calf. Although they do bring the blood of a bull offering there, as it's different. Specifically, he shouldn't wear clothes made of gold. The golden implements of the temple were fine. The shofar blowing isn't done inside the innermost chamber of the temple like by the Yom Kippur service, but it's blown for a remembrance, so it's like it's done in the innermost chamber of the temple. This is explained further. Some say that the issue of the cow's horn is that it looks like multiple shofars, which is not allowed, as it appears segmented. Others disagree, as it's still one horn, and for the other reasons mentioned. It also gives the translation for a word for ram, and then gives the explanation for many words that had difficult translations then, particular to specific regions, such as the words selling, bride, rooster, and others. There are other unique words listed and their uses. New Mishnah, the shofar horn by the temple as described here should be from a wild goat, straight with its mouth plated in gold, and 2 trumpets blown alongside. The shofar is blown long and the trumpets short, as the shofar is the obligation. On fast days they use male ram horns, which are bent, with the mouths plated with silver, and the shofars are blown short and the trumpets long, as the main obligation there is that of the trumpets. The laws of the Yovel year are the same as Rosh Hashanah by the shofar blowing and the blessings. Some say we use a male bent horn on Rosh Hashanah and the wild goat horn on a Yovel year. The Gemara says another opinion that you use the bent horns on Rosh Hashanah and the Yovel year, and the straight horn by fasts, agreeing with the last opinion, but with that variation. The argument as to where you're using the bent or straight shofar is as bent represents submission and humility, and straight represents freedom, so it's which is better where. Also, the gold plating of the mouth is not an issue of an interposition, as the gold is not actually exactly where the mouth goes. The shofar blowing is prolonged past the trumpet, so you could hear it distinctly. Others disagree, saying you have to hear the full blast, not just the end, so they say that it's possible to discern between 2 different sounds from 2 sources. This is unlike by Mount Sinai, where the words remember the Shabbos and keep the Shabbos were said at the same time. Also, you'll be able to differentiate as you'll pay attention, as the blowing of the shofar is dear to you. The shofar blowing is extended, according to this opinion, to inform people that the mitzvah of this day is with the shofar. The other shofar was made of silver. Some say as shofars used for gathering people are made with silver based on a verse, or to spare the money of the Jewish people. Rosh Hashanah gets a gold one to honor the holiday. It also says that this, with the shofar and trumpets, was only done by the temple. It also says we pray, saying, "This day is the beginning of your works," a commemoration of the first day, as the world was created in the month of Tishrei. This is discussed further. New Mishnah. A broken shofar that was glued back together cannot be used. You also can't glue shofar fragments together to make a shofar. If the shofar was punctured and then sealed, if it impedes the blowing, it's invalid. If not, it's fine. If you create an echo with the shofar, if you hear the shofar, great. If you only hear the echo, it doesn't work. Similarly, if you pass by a synagogue and hear a shofar being blown or the Megillah being read on Purim, if you focus your intent on it, then it's valid. If not, then it's not, as you heard it without intent. The Gemara mentions some other shofar adjustments. If it was shortened, it's fine. If it was hollowed out, it's fine. If the gold plate is where his mouth is, it's not fine. If it's elsewhere, it's fine. If it was plated with gold on the inside, it's not valid. If the gold plating on the outside changed the sound, it's not valid. The same points on a punctured shofar are repeated. If you put a shofar inside a shofar and blow the inside one, if you hear the inside shofar, it's valid. If you hear it from the outside shofar, it's not. There are other cases mentioned. If you invert the shofar by widening the narrow part and shrinking the wide part, it's invalid, as it has to be like how it was on the animal. There are other cases mentioned. Some say the shofar must be big enough that when held it protrudes from both ends of your hands. The sounds can be anything, high or low or deep or whatever. Some say it's fine if you drill through the bone inside instead of removing it. There are further qualifications about echoes brought. It also says that if people are in a pit that a shofar is being blown into, that's valid for them, and there's no concern of them sticking their head out and only hearing the echo. It also says that you shouldn't blow a shofar taken from an animal consecrated for a burnt offering, but if you do, it's fine and valid. It is not fine and valid by an animal consecrated for a peace offering, as if misused, they still retain their sanctity and still can't be used. Others disagree and said neither are allowed, but later said both are permitted, as it's being used for a mitzvah, which isn't considered personal benefit. If a shofar was used for idol worship, you shouldn't use it. But it's valid if you did. If you used a shofar from a city where a majority worshipped idols, it's not valid, as a city like that is destined to be burnt, so anything within is considered to have that status preemptively, and it's not valid for use. If you have a vow that you won't benefit from another person, and he blows shofar for you, or you vow to not benefit from a shofar, it's still valid, as a mitzvah is not considered a personal benefit. That and similar cases are discussed. There are further points on the necessities of intent when listening to something like this, and similar discussions on other topics. Some require the blower of the shofar to have intent for it to be valid for everybody listening. So, if somebody walks by a synagogue where a shofar is being blown and has intent for himself that it should be valid, it works, as the blower intended to include the community in general when he was blowing it. There's further discussion. New Mishnah. It says that when the Jewish people in the desert fought against Amalek, when Moshe held up his hands, then Israel prevailed. That is to say, that as long as the Jewish people focused and prayed to God, they were able to win. Similarly, in the desert there was a plague, and Moshe put up a serpent on a pole. And obviously, it wasn't the snake that was healing people. It was that when people looked upwards, they prayed to God, and were healed. Anyways, a deaf mute, an imbecile, and a minor cannot blow shofar for others. Generally, somebody who's not obligated to do something for themselves cannot fill the obligation for others. The Gemara says, everybody is obligated to hear the shofar. The Kohen, a Levi, a Yisrael, a convert, a freed slave, a tumtum, someone with indeterminate genitals, an androgynous, somebody with both male and female genitals, and a half-slave. A tumtum cannot discharge the obligation of another tumtum, as it's a possibility he's a female and the listener is a male, or for a regular individual. An androgynous can blow shofar for another androgynous, as they both can be considered female, but he can't blow shofar for anybody else. There are similar points by a slave. We have to specify that Kohanim and Leviim are obligated, as you might have thought otherwise, that they're exempt from the laws of the Yovel year, which is compared to Rosh Hashanah. There are further similar points. It also has some points on the after blessing and discharging the obligation for others, saying you should only do it if you're eating with them or for your family for educational reasons. Also, by the Hallel prayer and the reading of Megillas Esther on Purim, you can fulfill the obligation for others even if you've already done it for yourself. And that's the end of chapter 3.